gonna record.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, so hello, lovely ladies. This is Claudia from Nourished by Claudia, founder of the Recover from HA support group and the Period Comeback Protocol. And today I am beyond excited of sharing this space with Stacey. So hello, Stacey. Welcome. How are you
Good
doing?
morning. I'm well, thank you. I'm well, thank you.
And it was so easy also to organize this meeting with Stacey because we are both in Australia, so I didn't have to go through loops to understand where she was calling from. So all the way from, is it Melbourne or Victoria? No.
Yeah, so Victoria, I'm about, I'd say 60 minutes outside of Melbourne. I'm in a sort of little country town.
Beautiful. And you are a mom, a very busy mom as well.
I am.
A business, and you have been dealing with hypothalamic amenorrhea, cannot even say it anymore, for quite a while. And you know what, Stacey, I just had a flashback before jumping on this call. And I remember that 12 months ago, Jade and we ran a free 5 days HA recovery challenge, and you were part of it. And you were always responding, always watching the lives, always engaging and doing the tasks. And over the past 12 months, you've done so much groundwork. And then finally, when you were very comfortable with yourself, with your life, then the period came.
Yeah.
I really would like to start from scratch. And can you please let us know, how did you lose your period? And how long ago, and what was going on back then?
Yeah, my story is an interesting one because I'm not sure how many ladies have sort of gone down this avenue, and it might be very common, but it was one of those things where I was cycling regularly as a teenager, as a young adult, and then all of a sudden I met my now husband, and with our kind of background and where I come from, my culture, it was kind of like, well, you know, if you start a relationship, it might be best to think about contraception. You know, we don't want to go down that avenue so young. So of course, I went on that avenue, started birth control, and I guess I didn't know. I was very young, so I was probably my early 20s. So I didn't know anything about, you know, the withdrawal bleed not being a real bleed. I didn't know anything. Like, the doctors never explained any of that to you. You know, they're just like, oh, here you go, here's your pill, try that one. So I decided to do that, and then I was on that for about 5 or 6 years. So it was masking a lot of these now symptoms I know is HA back then. So initially I got married and I decided to do this health kick, you know, as we all do. Stripped a lot of food groups out of my diet, ramped up the exercise, of course, and being on the pill, I still had the withdrawal bleed. So for me, I was never told anything different. I thought, well, this is my period. And I went along on that journey for a good 4 years, decided we wanted to start a family, came off birth control, and lo and behold, no natural cycle had returned. So that was probably about 8 to 12 months without a cycle. Still in my behaviours of restricted, you know, food groups, exercising too much. But of course, that wasn't even a thought process to me. It was just part of my lifestyle now. I'd gone down that avenue. So lo and behold, we decided to go and seek assistance, fertility assistance. So that's where my journey then headed. I did a lot of, you know, ultrasounds, which doctors told me I had PCOS. I was told I had lazy ovaries. I was told I was, you know, insufficient in all these sort of things, that it wasn't that at all. It was literally HA for a very long time for me. And I think these behaviours had continued on. So even though I was successful in having 3 pregnancies with fertility assistance, I was never actually told, well, hang on a second, Stacey, let's have a look at your lifestyle at the moment and let's gauge what's going on there. Nobody actually ever said that to me until I thought, well, why can't I seem to get this cycle occurring? After I had my first 2 children, I was able to have a natural cycle 3 months after birth, breastfeeding, and then nothing sort of returned from there. And then it wasn't until I had my 3rd baby that I was doing more research into what I do now as my profession. And yes, the pieces were starting to come together that I think it was energy depletion. It was exercising and moving too much. It was not nourishing myself after training sessions. It was not sleeping at all. You know, there were fundamentals to health that weren't occurring in my days. So I sort of had this idea of, okay, it sounds very much like this, and was able to seek assistance from an endocrinologist, obviously reaching out to yourself, and following along your journey and seeing your Instagram post. And it was sort of all starting to connect the dots for me and sort of going, yeah, well, this is where I'm heading and where I am at the moment. And as you said, finding and speaking to you and reaching out, I think I just had my youngest then, and I was heavily sleep deprived. And you were sort of saying to me lots of things that I still take on to this day where, you know, Stacey, if you're not feeling it and you don't want to exercise on that day, listen to your body. That's one thing that's really stuck true to me. And I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. But I think that very, restrictive brain was coming in going, no, well, you still have to move and you still have to do these things. Even though you've got a list as long as your arm to do on that day, you still need to focus on that. So yeah, I think it took me a little while to go, you know what, there are some rules I've got in place that I really need to push through. And probably the last 2 years or the last year and a half, I've really started to call myself out on those lies that I was telling myself. And it's been absolutely liberating because I've been able to say, I can test those. I can say, well, where's the evidence for that? There is none. So let's go forth and do it. And for example, it might be creating my own meals and actually eating those meals of pastas and breads and stuff like that, and saying, you know what, you can enjoy this and nothing bad's going to happen, after it. Or you can rest from the gym today. Nothing bad's going to happen after it. And just testing my challenges and my own personal roadblocks and finding the truth within them.
I love so many of the things that you shared with us this morning, and I really don't know where to start from.
Sorry.
No, absolutely, all golden nuggets. And I love that your intuition really kicked in over the past few months and you started questioning yourself and actually bringing awareness to the behaviors. And you started thinking, oh, hang on a second, I'm absolutely exhausted, I'm tired, and now I have also 3 kids. Do I really need to exercise? And if I'm cooking pasta for everyone, who is saying that I cannot have that plate of pasta? Why do I have to go through loops to make another meal just for myself? That's disordered thoughts is not what I want. And I love that you called yourself out and you have allowed yourself to expand your life, not only to get your period back, but to finally come back to yourself, to the person that you wanted to be. There is one question that I wanted to ask you. In the very beginning, you mentioned that even when you were on the oral contraceptive pill, you had symptoms that you didn't know that they were part of hypothalamic amenorrhea, but you still experienced them and you noticed them. Which kind of symptoms were you referring to?
I think I knew deep down that there were some disordered eating patterns happening. Symptomatic, like even with having the cycle, I was experiencing, the back pain, not a lot of bloating at the time, but I experienced the back pain, which was very similar to my natural cycles. Just the lethargy around that sort of cycle week prior to, slight increase in hunger. Those things were still occurring even when the hormones were completely suppressed by the pill. And I don't know if that was my natural hormones trying to kick in, obviously through that bleed or the sugar pill component of the contraceptive pill. But I noticed, a few of those things. But I think that too, I noticed being tired and not being able to go through with exercises as I could have done had I'd fueled myself correctly. I think I noticed those things, but sometimes when you're caught up in life, you just steamroll straight through it and you just keep going with those daily habits because that's your new norm, and then anything that is outside of that, as I've worked on, is really scary. So you don't want to go beyond what you've been doing. And to think about weight gain and all that sort of stuff, it it is a fear that's there. So I don't know whether, you know, I look back now and, you know, you always say to yourself, well, I should have saw myself doing that. And then sometimes I reflect back on my journey. I just think, I can't believe I used to ask people to have separate meal options for me at functions. Like, I don't know how I did that. And it's not really, and when I think, I'm like, oh, that's not me as a person. I don't know why I did that. It's, yeah, but you can't go back and do that to yourself, because you wouldn't get very far.
Absolutely. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And those were
Exactly.
very resourceful coping mechanism to deal with your anxiety at that time. And all of a sudden they became quite unresourceful. And that's where you started to call yourself out and you decided to move on. You
Yeah.
also mentioned that the time where you had your first baby, and that's the first time that you reached out to me. I remember that you joined the HA recovery program online, and you are feeling exhausted, and there is so much pressure on new moms to be perfect, to be there for their babies, to go out and take them for a walk, to organize play dates, and at the same time to support their body through optimal nutrition and to exercise and to get the body back. But we sometimes forget that the only thing that we need to do on the first 4 months postpartum is to simply be with the baby, allow other people to help us, and to rest and regenerate so that we can have other babies. That's what we have been doing for centuries. All of a sudden, in the past 20 years, the narrative has changed to our detriment. And that's why so many postpartum women, they cannot get the second period back, and they are completely anxious and exhausted. Not to mention the sleep deprivation, that maybe the situation has changed for you, but I'm still sleep deprivation after 6 years.
Yeah, it's still there.
Absolutely. So you also mentioned that you had to gain weight, and you had to face the fact that the some gain needed to happen, not only gain in life, meaning like enjoying life more, but also changing your body. How did you overcome the fear, and how did you push yourself through that specific roadblock?
Yeah, I mean, it's an emotional ride that you go on when you start to nourish your body more, to the point where you do start to see body changes. So there's definitely body composition changes and body changes within myself. And I was just sort of doing it, whether it was slowly or quickly, I'm not sure, but it was something that I knew deep down, and this is where I had to call myself out again, was it had to happen. It had to happen. I was in a body that didn't feel nourished. I was in a body that wasn't feeling overly safe. You know, it was something that I knew I had to do for my daughter and my sons, because they are seeing and they are watching everything I do. So what I had to have a really hard word with myself and say, what kind of role model, what kind of person do I want to be for the 3 little humans I tried so hard to have? You know, what am I going to do? How am I going to impact them with their food choices, with how they look at their body, and how they treat themselves, how they talk to themselves? So that took me a little while. And when I say a little while, it's probably, you know, a good 3 months for me to say, this needs to happen. You need to just let it go, because you can't control this anymore, because it's not going the way you want it to go with the control that you have. You know, you want it to be able to get your cycle back. These are the fundamental things that need to occur. This is just what needs to happen for you. You know, and that's me as an individual, obviously. You know, talking about my journey, it was very much about focusing on what I needed to do to nourish my body, to get it to feel safe again. And that's the whole idea behind, you know, what I felt with the weight gain, because I knew it did have to occur. I know I've got little sponges around me that watch everything I do, you know. So I wanted to make sure that I'm speaking in a voice that's going to be kind, gentle and nurturing, because I want them to do that. Even my sons, you know, I want them to see that, because, you know, one day they will hopefully meet someone, and I want them to also be very supportive of that partner should anything occur as well. So I'm very cautious of how I speak about myself, about food as well, because I want them to start on the right foot. I don't want them to go down that avenue that I went down. So I'm trying to be that person that can support them, and it's going to ultimately start with me. So in a roundabout way, I know that was a really long way to answer that, but ideally it was just having that conversation with myself and reminding myself each time it got a little bit difficult, because I'm not going to lie, it was tough some days, you know. Some days I wanted to say things, so journaling was really helpful. The prompts that I got from yourself was super helpful to really get to the crux of what I wanted to get out of my mind onto the paper. So that was very helpful as well. And discussion with my husband, he's very supportive. So I found that he was a really good sounding board when I was having days where I was noticing changes that, you know, I just wanted to get that off my chest. And then I felt better because he was a really great person to communicate with.
But the reality is that when you're trying to control your body through changing your diet and your exercise routine, you're not really controlling anything. You're actually losing control over your life, and that's definitely a slippery slope. So it sounds like that protecting your three little sponges and having the support from your husband, journaling, and being part of also a community of women that really resonates with the story that you
Absolutely.
was helpful for you. May I ask you, because lots of women are absolutely terrified of the idea of gaining weight. Was it that bad to actually gain the weight that you needed at the end?
I think now I look back at it, and look, I'm not really sure whether this is sort of where my body's completely comfortable either. So I'm very much aware that it might change again. And I think what I told myself as well is that our bodies are meant to change. You know, we go through seasons in life where our body's meant to change for us. You know, we see that through pregnancy, postpartum. Like, we're not the same as we were when we were teenagers, because we're completely different now. As you know, as we age, we change completely. So when I look back, I guess some days I would say it was pretty difficult, and some days I look back, which is now most of the days, it's not a big deal. It is something that I feel I can fuel my body correctly, and it's where it wants to be, and it feels fine.
How has your life changed compared to 3 years ago, let's say?
I'm definitely less stressed, and I know that sounds funny because I have a lot going on in my life, but I think I've been able to alleviate some brain space, as well as not focusing so much on food. Food doesn't take up my, whole brain now, and focusing on, well, what am I going to eat? Because I don't eat certain things. What am I going to eat? That doesn't happen anymore. And exercise and movement is, if you feel like doing it, absolutely go for it. So it's not like, oh, I think about my week and say, well, I can't really get much in this week, but that's okay because I know that nothing bad's going to happen. So definitely less head is filled with those sort of thoughts around food and exercise. I think I'm definitely a little bit calmer overall. Having the 3 kids now, it's like, that's okay. We can fix that later. And I'm sort of now gravitating more toward positive thinking of, okay, so how can we make this, have a positive ending if there's a situation like that? So definitely got more brain space than I did 3 years ago, I think.
Yeah, and I believe that having 3 kids is also helping you to actually distract the thought into something else, because physically speaking, literally speaking, you don't have that much time in your day to day. And
Yeah.
I've personally loved exchanging messages with you while you were in the HA community over the past few months, because it sounded like that every single week you sat down with your thoughts and you took one step forward in your journey. And every single week you were able to clear some baggage from your brain. And it was beautiful to witness. And actually, I invite you to go back and listen to your messages from week to week and see how much you've grown in such a small time. Now, how was getting your period back?
Oh, it was the most amazing thing ever. And I'd never thought I would think that, being that you hear so many others. But for me, I was actually shocked, completely and utterly shocked. I think I might have mentioned it to you, but I screamed out to my husband, who was actually out in the paddock. So I don't know if my neighbours heard me, but it was just amazing. And I was on cloud 9 for literally 5 days of that. Was just amazing. And every time I had a cramp or a backache, I was just welcoming it all. And I was just so happy. I was just beside myself. I couldn't even, I think I sent you a message. I'm like, I'm here at the supermarket. Look where I am.
Yeah.
I actually needed to be here, and it feels amazing. I felt so great. And it was just, I was kept thanking my body, as funny as that sounds, but I was just like, thank you for just allowing me to kick it up a notch with my feel-good hormones. Like, it was just so good. I was just so grateful every day it was just, and even today, like, I look back and think, I'm so grateful. Thank you for that. I appreciate it so much. And I think now I'm sort of, as the months sort of progressed, I'm starting to connect with my body, as we spoke about, like nourishing my body, but also nourishing my brain. And now what I feel like I'm doing is we're connecting more and more as the months are going on. And it sounds funny, but I feel like maybe going back 3 years ago, I probably was a bit disconnected with my body. You know, I wasn't, and even going back after my second baby, when I look at it, I wasn't showing that gratitude that I really should have for my body at that time. So I want to really repair that. I want to spend time on repairing that connection and that relationship, because I think that's super important.
Yeah, and you have the chance to do so right now and for the next 60 years.
Exactly.
It's funny that every single time that I get told that a woman gets a period, I get teary. It's like honestly, I have to put like plugs in my eyes before starting. I remember that you sent me a message that day, and you started by saying, "I do apologize for disturbing you." Said that you sent me pictures of being at the supermarket looking at ads, because that's the aisle of the supermarket that you might have completely brushed off from almost not a decade, a little bit less than that, for a very, very long time. And it's so nice now to finally also experiment with that, and like seeing which kind of pads really suit your body, and then looking how your body's going to respond in the next few months to changing training, changing eating, changing life in general. I'm so appreciative of all the things that you've shared with us, especially because you have this fantastic level of awareness of intuition, also because you didn't get your period back in 5 weeks. You got your period back in a couple of years, and we need to know these stories, because sometimes it takes longer than 5 weeks, 7 weeks, 3 months. But that's also where the magic can really unfold, because when you got your period, you are already a different Stacey. And the day before, you actually had sent me a message telling me, Claudia, I'm fine now. I think I'm ready to just move on with my life and to keep the community, because I feel at ease with my own self and my own body. And the next day or 2 days later, you got your period. It was like completing the cycle in a very way. So before I let you go, Stacey, something that you would like to share with the women that are listening to this right now, or that are going to listen to this on replay, something that you would like to tell them, especially if they are stuck in the recovery journey, or if they are starting it right now? Is there something that could have helped you back then?
Yeah, I think that potentially weighing up, you know, sort of what is helpful for you at the moment, what is helping and what is not so helpful. And with the things that aren't so helpful, to just simply say to yourself, let it go. I found that was extremely helpful for me, especially feeling any kind of guilt around not having a regular cycle, any guilt anywhere. And I sort of had to say to myself, I can't keep dragging myself back with these thoughts. I literally have to let them go. And it just elevated my thought process to another level, because I didn't have those thoughts weighing me down. And I felt that using that, just those 3 words, let it go, was just so helpful for me. And if that's something that can help you ladies as well, just to take stock of what is most important, what's no longer serving you, and just tell yourself to let it go.
Yeah, very powerful. And I do understand and appreciate that for some women, it's really hard to let it go, especially for those of us that it's our white knuckling process, the recovery process of
Absolutely.
life in general. But sometimes when you soften, especially around this process, is when you can really start listening to your brain, to your body, and connect the dots.
Yeah, and it took me years to do it. It took years of the same thought processes that kept coming up. So, as you're saying, it is very difficult to do. But if you can slowly implement those thoughts across, your days, your weeks, your months, and see if it assists you.
At least plant a seed. Nothing can wrong gonna grow if you plant that seed. So thank you, Stacey, for sharing your story, for being here with us. And I would like to thank you, all the ladies, for joining us today. And I will see you back next week with another wonderful live. So once again, thank you, Stacey, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you so much.